Welcome to my second DFE presentation. I presented last summer. If you're not familiar with me, name's Bryson McCarthy. I'm a senior biology major. I was part of cohort 12 after my freshman year, and I joined EPG not because I thought it directly helped me with wanting to be a doctor, but helped me in a lot of indirect ways. I was really convinced that it could help me achieve a mindset and a perspective that extended to any field that I wanted, and I thought those kind of skills were really important. So for this DFE presentation, I'm going to be presenting on astronaut. I did that last summer, if you were here before. Astronaut is all about biomedical research and extending that to people with adverse backgrounds. Last summer, I really enjoyed it. I liked the biomedical research, I liked the challenges, I liked the success, and I liked the presentation. So I wanted to do it again. But part of searching for that internship through the second time is you had to do well the first time. You had to go in, you had to show them that you were willing to work hard, you were willing to do the research, and you were willing to produce. And so part of that was I asked my mentor, who is actually the Dean of Basic Science at the Vanderbilt Medical Center, to write me a letter of recommendation. And up here I have some quotes that, I quoted some of the things he said that made me feel really confident and good about myself and made me feel like I was on the right path. The administrator, Dr. Hudson, who founded the astronaut program, had told my PI that I blew my presentations out of the water my first summer. He said he thought I didn't need a recommendation letter, but they would write me one anyways, and they strongly suggested that I come back the next summer, which was really promising, and I just applied. It was a normal application process. I had my letter of recommendation from my PI. I had my letter of recommendation from my advisor, Dr. Blank, as well. So the internship site is in Nashville, Tennessee. It's at the Vanderbilt Medical Center, and this is the kind of lab that I was working in. I was at a bench, and I conducted a lot of experiments. And so the function of the internship site at Vanderbilt Medical Center is to provide health care to lots of people. They are regional, and they have top-class health care for anyone in the area. They also have a lot of biomedical research, which is what attracted me. They also have a medical school. And within that, we had a few deans and the head of the Biomedical Center of Matrix Biology. They founded the astronaut program. And the astronaut program is a way for them to give back to the community. They wanted to help bring in students who were dealing with adversity and expose them to science. And this is their model right here. They work on different education levels. They use beaming science labs where they help students in rural areas who aren't exposed to science. Maybe they have a history teacher who's teaching their science. And they'll do like Skype calls where they do labs with the students in class. They also provide research experience for high school students and graduate students and undergraduate students, which is what I did. So I'm one of those students, and so one of my roles and function in the lab were I would sit at the bench, I would design experiments, I would conduct them, I would ask questions, I would record my results, and I would do presentations. But you know, I needed some skill sets to come in here because there's a lot of obscurity and adversity that comes with doing biomedical research at a top 10 tier school. So I had a bunch of EPG abilities that prepared me for these moments. And I'd like to dissect them part by part to show you my successes, my challenges, my questions, and opportunities that I got. So the first one was engaging uncertainty and complexity, bootstrapping, creative problem solving, working in dynamic groups, branding, advocating change, opportunity recognition, and finally success networking. So engaging in uncertainty and complexity was the biggest one. There were tons of questions going through my mind. And this is my second summer. So my first summer, they kind of babied me. They held my hand. They told me how to do calculations, how to run experiments, how to read peer-reviewed articles. But as soon as I came in the second time, my mentor looked at me and said, sorry, Bryson, training wheels are off, can't baby you anymore. You're going to have to come up with your own project. You're going to have to implement all the ways that you can do the project, and you're going to have to deliver. So one of the first skills that I got from EPG was design thinking. I had to come up with a project. I had to think of a question, and that question had to apply to some scientific model, and I had to find out ways to answer it. So it required me to do lots of research, lots of reading, a lot of analysis. So I had to dig in the skills that I got from EPG as well as the skills that I obtained the previous summer. And then I had to deliver. So that means I had to come up with a question, I had to implement the experiments, and then show the data, and I would present it to my mentor. But there were a lot of problems, and I had to call on my ability to bootstrap. If you're not familiar with bootstrapping, it's when you just come across a lot of adversity over and over and over, and you just have to keep pulling up by your bootstraps and just pushing through. Now you may not understand these figures here. Some of them are Michaelis-Menten graphs, and some of them are just bar graphs. And they represent weeks and weeks of me struggling and toiling with my experiments, not getting the data I need. And that was really hard for me. They were treating me like a graduate student, and I felt like I was drowning. But, you know, I had a summer before where I did it. I was determined. I wanted to be a doctor, and I knew that I could do it. So I had to draw on creative problem solving. With the help of my mentor and other graduate students, I came up with these really pretty graphs that represent 3 different types of experiments. I had to step back and reflect on what was going on with my data and my experiments, and then look at it from different perspectives. So actually, each of these graphs represent data that was pertinent to my research, where I did 3 different methods, and they all agreed with each other, giving me the data I needed. And that was a really great moment, because personally, the benefits of research is that you have a question, you do all the work on your own, and then you find out new information that nobody else in the world knows. And that's a discovery, and that felt really great. Some other skills I used were dynamic group work. I had my lab from the previous summer, and they were really excited to see me back. When I came in, my mentor was like, "Wow, Bryson, you look so handsome. Did you get a haircut?" And I said, "Well, you haven't seen me in a year, but I really appreciate it." That's him right there. He's the one who tortured me all summer, but it was good torture. And then I also shared the lab with a lot of seasoned and experienced people, and that was a high school student up there. I'm not actually in this picture because I was presenting, which is kind of sad. But I really appreciated working with all these people. I had to learn how to work in a group. My first day in the lab, my first summer, someone called me my mentor's minion. So I had to work hard, sit my butt down in the chair, and just use my grit and show them that I should be respected and that I care about this and I want to succeed, which was a really good feeling. I also had another great support group. Maybe some of you recognize these faces. Some of them came from Berea College, like Isaac Dominique. I had a really great support network of students. If we were struggling and we weren't getting a lot of help from our mentors or our PIs, we'd meet up with each other and we could help each other. Because like, I had this previous summer experience, I know how to do a Western blot, you don't know how to do a Western blot, this is your first summer, we can help each other. And it was a great way of working in a group, which I knew would help me in the future. The next EPG ability that I got was branding. This is really unique to Aspernaut. And it's not something that every other program does. You know, near the end of the summer, we all meet up as undergraduate programs, Harvard, Emory, Yale. And one thing that's unique to Aspernaut at Vanderbilt is that they give us these white lab coats. And these are symbols that we're professionals, well, kind of junior professionals, and we're committed to going into the field of either research science or being a medical professional. So we had these great ceremonies where we were given white lab coats and we got to take lots of pictures. I even wore my lab coat through the cafeteria where all the doctors worked, and I really felt like a doctor. I knew I wasn't. But it was all about branding and getting that idea that you are professional, you're working towards professionalism, and that's what this program was about. Finally, there was advocating change. So, I mean, what was the point of all of this besides to try to make an impact on the scientific community as well as enrich myself? And one thing that comes with research is being able to communicate your research. I got to go to 2 different conferences where I was able to present my research to different professionals. Here I have the KUH Summer Undergraduate Research Conference. Because we performed so well on the Vanderbilt level, they invited us to come up to the NIH in Maryland, where we could present our data. And that's a really big deal. If you're not familiar, the National Institute of Health is pretty much what provides most of the money for research around the country. And we were able to go up there and present ourselves, represent Berea, represent Vanderbilt, among other students who were in Harvard, Emory, Yale, Princeton. And it was a really good time. So I think my presentation went really well. Unlike the other students, we had to wear our lab coats while we were presenting, and that was part of the branding that I was talking about. The other students didn't have to wear lab coats. They didn't even have lab coats. So we were better than them. Also, so on the NIH level, I performed really well. That's not me boasting, but my administrators told me that. So last summer, I got to share the news with you all. They invited me to go to the American Urology Conference in Chicago. I went, I had a really good time. They invited me again. So this November, I get to go to New Orleans and present my data on that level again. And national conferences are a really big deal. I'm trying to get into med school. If I have that on my resume, it looks great. And that was all part of opportunity recognition. Identifying that this is going to help me in the future, this is going to help me succeed, I need to take advantage of it. Someone else was given this opportunity, they want to go to med school, but they're going to a soccer tournament, which kind of stinks. I think it's all about trying to prepare yourself for the future. Also, I learned to success network. So part of Astronaut program was we had distinguished speaker luncheons. So all of the Astronaut students would collect in a room. And we would have some distinguished speaker from somewhere in the Vanderbilt campus or outside of the Vanderbilt campus that would come in and they would talk to us and they would give us their advice and guide us. Some of the notable people that I thought were really cool was Jeff Balser. He was the dean of the medical school. Andre Churchwell, he actually comes down here to Berea to talk to students. So if you're a science major, you can connect with him. He's the dean of adversity at Vanderbilt. John York, I put him up there because he's my favorite. So he's the head of the biochemistry department. I was working in the biochemistry department. And my PI, the person who runs my lab, he's the dean of basic science. And John York used to be his boss, but now my PI is his boss. So we got to connect on that level. It was a good time. It was really fun. He was a little bitter, but we connected. And then I also had some self-guided connections. So when I was at the KUH conference in NIH, I met this man named Jason Cobb. He was assistant professor of medicine at Emory University. And we did guided poster sessions, and he was one of the people who was in my group. He said I asked really great questions. He said I presented really well, and he gave me his card. He said that he's on the medical admission board at Emory University, and if I submit my application there, he'll make sure to look at it if I email him based on the card, which is a really great opportunity. Emory is a super great school. I'd love to go to medical school there. So next steps, reflecting on everything that EBG has helped me do. I know that this is my last DFE presentation, my last undergraduate internship. I definitely feel like I've made the most of it. EPG was a great summer. I was really enriched, had a really great time, and then I used those skills in my next internships at Vanderbilt. So next, I still have that conference to go to. I want to represent Berea and Vanderbilt really well with my research in New Orleans. I'm applying to med school right now. Dr. Hackbird is nice enough to be writing me a letter of recommendation. And I also want to graduate, which will happen in May, and I'm sure it's going to go really fast. If I had any advice to you all, I would say that going into science isn't clear-cut. My freshman year, they suggested that I do research, but I thought EPG was just such a great opportunity and would provide me with a lot of skills that could extend to a lot of different fields. And I have seen the benefits from that, and I feel a lot of connections. And I think it's just been a good time at Berea College. Any questions?